Okay, so I mentioned some owner-operator relationships. We've got some resources here. We got into this. I just want to take a moment here. Bad situations, right? I think we've kind of we started to allude to some issues with leases. So I do want to ask everyone to take like 30 seconds. And this could be a maple experience you've observed, and maybe it's a forestry situation because you don't have enough maple stories, but I just want everyone to think about one situation where you may want the lease to spell something out, or you can imagine needing a lawyer afterwards to sort out a possible dispute. Take a minute. Just think of one example. I kind of want to go around the room because everyone thinks a little differently and everyone's observed some different stuff over time. We'll just see how many of these bad situations we can capture.
I mean, I got a quick one.
Nope, not yet. People need some time to think.
Need some thinking. I can smell it.
We'll start with Chris. We're not going to tell stories here because we don't have all day. What's the situation that may require a lawyer to clean up, or ideally a lease to sort out previously?
Well, it's one of the things I think that got us starting about talking about leases, but the guy I sell my sap to built a big, huge sugar house based on a handshake lease to access a whole bunch of maple trees that were nearby. The handshake agreement did not pan out in the end, and now he's got a big, huge sugar house with there's no sap flowing to it, so he buys and transports in exclusively, which is great for me because he wants to buy a lot of sap because he's overproduction.
So not formalized tenure or access to the resource.
And not deciding to go. I mean, handshake deals are legal, but you got to enforce them and not deciding to go that way.
Good. Mike, what do you got?
Landowner dies 3 years into a 10-year lease, and the lease is not provided for it to be carried through to heirs, successors, assigns, and agents.
Awesome. Let's remember that. Binding on heirs.
Just recently I was out with a sugar maker who had a handshake deal with a neighbor. The neighbor changed his mind on what the lease payment was going to be. They have no formal lease.
No formal lease and a suggested price adjustment. Yeah, all right. How about you? Anyone? Any ideas?
Issues with BNPs that aren't outweighed on the lease. Whose responsibility?
Sounds like compliance.
Client's land was tapped unbeknownst to them by a neighbor who had a lease, who guy then died, and now the 2 liens just there.
So unbeknownst, so we have some tree poaching going on?
Yeah, so like who's responsible for that?
Who's responsible for that one?
We're dealing with this right now. Ethan's aware of it. A right-of-way through property and differences of opinion on what the right-of-way needs to look like after the access is gained. So just differences of understanding around post conditions. So.
Good.
I had a debt, a lease, yeah.
These don't happen all the time, but when they happen, they're like bombs going off, right? Like it stops everything.
Yeah, I'm thinking like handshake deal that was great with the older generation. The new generation is just not either aware or not interested in continuing. And then also similar to what you said about roads or BNPs, like roads not really being illustrated in the lease at all. And what happens when, as Fran said, you install a bunch of tubing in October and roads are shit, like who is supposed to take care of that? What should the roads look like?
Yeah, very common.
Especially if the roads haven't been used in 20 years, they're going to look great.
Who's in charge of the investment improvement compared to who's got what the responsibilities of the operator are? Yeah, and I just want to hit that handshake one. Like, that's just a cultural dynamic. It's a cultural dynamic. We trust each other. It's always been done this way. So to present and say, I actually need some paperwork here. Being prepared for that cultural shift between human beings. Some people get it. Some people don't want to play ball. Mark, you got a juicy one?
Like a COVID refugee property transfer, and there's an existing agreement, handshake deal. Sugar maker's left with a landowner who just isn't interested in maple at all. And so they're left with a tubing system that they've invested in, but can't have access.
Go ahead.
The property change was mine too, but another one to think about is kind of forest management too, or like, these trees are in my way, am I allowed to cut this? Or I'm the landowner and this sugar maker came in and cut these trees that I didn't want cut, or the saplings, or damaged a bunch of tree, or put hardware in trees, whatever like that, or
Yeah.
driving up through with equipment to make the roads, but also damaged and now I have these ugly looking trees, or cut out everything that wasn't a maple and I didn't want that.
And it seems to me like we got a few different parties. We got a landowner. Well, we got a lawyer that's drafting an agreement. We got a landowner that does or does not have any idea what's going on in the woods. We've got an operator that has an idea of what they want to do in the woods. And then we've got a forester possibly in that mix as well, right? So
The lawyer definitely doesn't know what's going on in the woods either. They drafted some ridiculous agreement, probably that doesn't make any sense.
yeah, definitely.
I would say differing expectations about other land stewardship responsibilities. Like landowner thinks the lessee is supposed to mark boundaries, manage hunters, deal with this stuff like that.
Got it. Yeah.
A non-resident landowner has a lease with a sugar maker that their father had a handshake deal with, and she wanted to get it more in writing, but it's still not clear the boundaries of where they can and can't tap. So the sugar maker's eking into an area that she would never thought was going to have more tubing.
More of that ugly tubing. All right, I think we're going to break for lunch. So I will just say that if we do, I think we'll do a business station in the woods. We'll talk a little bit about some of those startup costs. Let's just see. Let's just see if we got them all. Or this is my guest list. Owner death, successor and assigned section is the lease binding on heirs. That's in our template. Lease rate on active taps or total property taps available. That will come up. What if the producer doesn't want to tap all of them?
Definitely come up.
Problem tenant, and this gets into boundaries, other responsibilities, compliance, termination clauses, right? Having that in there. Prohibited uses. Who's liable? I think someone mentioned BMPs, compliance stuff. Who's going to be liable if there's a problem? And you guys were just talking about tubing. This is just a sample, right? There's a lot that could go wrong. We hope it doesn't. That's why these documents get pretty long, though, because we're trying to agree to it ahead of time. Because when this stuff happens, is not a great time to sit down and talk about how we want to handle it. It's sometimes too late at that point to get together and talk.